To understand Dong Qichang's ideas, we start with one of his enduring aphorisms, his advice to literati painters that they should read 10,000 books and walk 10,000 miles. What does he mean by this? Read 10,000 books is a way of saying that Chinese artists must learn and deeply absorb the art of the past. Remember, in China, copying the great works of past masters was always held in esteem. It allowed you as a painter to absorb, learn from, transmit, and honor your great predecessors, right? So Zhi made it one of his principles of painting way back in the 500s. And we see Emperor Huizong painting a copy of a great Tang Dynasty painting. Zhi had instructed painters to proceed by, quote, copying and transmitting. That echoes the words of Confucius, who said, quote, I merely transmit. I do not create. I love and revere the ancients. So when Emperor Huizong sets up an imperial academy of painting, copying as a means of transmitting past glory was essential to its academic values. Dong Qichang felt that by his time, that reverence for the past and the practice of copying had gone stale. It had become academic in the negative sense of the word academic, which means conventional. In other words, not original, the opposite of fresh. So he developed a new way of thinking about what it means to work with the past while making that great tradition your own. And when he says read 10,000 books and walk 10,000 miles, he means you must understand the knowledge of past masters. The 10,000 books represent recorded knowledge. But you must also walk 10,000 miles. You must learn to know the world with your own eyes directly. You must embark on your own journey of discovery, which will renew the artistic tradition in your own way. So in this painting, Dong Qichang is responding to an artwork made hundreds of years earlier by Dong Yuan, but he is not copying exactly. He is using that source painting as an occasion to make a spiritual connection across time. He's answering the call of the past with his own mark making as an exploration of the present. So the expressiveness in this painting is not so much just the rocks, the trees, the mist, the mountains, but the play of ink stroke against ink stroke in different touches and flickers that themselves have vitality. So let's see that by going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art website. They own the painting and use their zooming in feature to look at the mark making. So we experience the painting in terms of the changing marks. We see that the marks, their job is not to hide themselves in order to depict a rock, but to actually pull you into their own weave and movement, to see the marks as independent expressive units. So that a streak of dry brush gray plays off against the more wet play of more staccato marks. And those in turn will lead your eye up into still different kind of marks, crisper, washier, so that you are actually not just seeing trees and mountains, but the traces of the making of what is being depicted. So the brush is not a tool for matching reality or copying a previous artist's work literally, but a vehicle for discovery, improvisation, energy. Dong Qichang wants his landscape painting to follow the open field of the paper and for the viewer, us, to see repetition, reversal, rhyming, a kinetic energy like music or dance. In this way, Dong is emphasizing the abstract expressiveness of mark making in the 1600s, which is about 400 years before Western artists like André Derain, in this painting from 1905, got very interested in the same thing. Derain's painting is called a modernist painting in its attention to the process of painting, to the brushstrokes, the colors as arrangements, not just as copying of nature. And we can certainly say that literati painters like Dong Qichang were modernists as early as the Ming Dynasty. So Western modernists in the 19th and 20th centuries were breaking away from tradition, even seeking to undo tradition as a revolutionary gesture. And Dong Qichang doesn't want so much to undo tradition. He doesn't want to revolt against it, but he does want to renew it. And in that process of renewing and reimagining tradition, he is setting up in his writings a conceptual opposition. He talks about a distinction between Northern style painting versus Southern style. And you can loosely think of those as Northern style being court or academic or professional painting, and Southern style being literati painting. But he also wants more. He certainly wants to make a distinction about style, right? So Northern style emphasizes conventions, precision, refinement, everything we see with court painting, whereas the values of spontaneity, invention, those are associated with Southern style. But he doesn't just mean style. When he's using these terms, he's actually taking them from Chan Buddhism. Chan Buddhism is known as Zen Buddhism in Japan. And that term Zen is probably more familiar to many Westerners than Chan. So if I back up a bit, Chan Buddhism is a particular school of Buddhism, traditionally said to begin with an Indian Buddhist teacher named Bodhidharma, who came to China in the 500s. Chan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, both Chan and Zen mean meditation. And what they have as their distinctive feature is that both Chan and Zen are about stripping Buddhism back to the essential simplicity of meditation. Meditation is training the mind, liberating the mind. Remember, by the 500s, Buddhism is 1,000 years old. You have seen how Mahayana Buddhism developed, and many branches of Mahayana Buddhism talk about various transcendental Buddhas. Here in Chan and Zen, the teaching is to come back to the basic meditation. And in terms of thinking about a kind of a stripping back from elaborate ritual, there's a story about the founder of Chan Buddhism, Bodhidharma, the man who came from India and founded it in China. And the story is that the Chinese emperor said to Bodhidharma, "How much karmic merit have I attained from building great temples?" And Bodhidharma replied, "None at all." So Chan and Zen have a quality of emphasizing the cutting through and the valuing of simplicity. These fit very well with literati painting. And this mysterious painting really gives you the flavor of Bodhidharma. It's actually made by a Japanese artist, and I just love this representation of Bodhidharma. And Sashu is a Japanese artist who studied painting in China and is an important bridge between Chinese painting tradition and what evolves in Japan in his time around the 1400s. So Sashu is intensely inventive, so he fits very much with what Dong Qichang is talking about. And here he is depicting a shocking story that conveys the spirit of Chan or Zen as a kind of uncompromising commitment to the truth and a not being bound or relying over much on tradition. So here you see Bodhidharma sitting in his cave meditating, and he had refused to teach a student, the student is here, who desperately wanted to learn. In the Chan tradition, a student demonstrates readiness to receive the teachings by waiting outside the temple gates for days or weeks. It's an act of humble devotion that is like an application for admission, but not to college. Here it's to the training for enlightenment. And in this story, as depicted by Sishu, the student has waited outside Bodhidharma's cave for so long, and Bodhidharma is unmoving, refuses to recognize him, so he finally decides to cut off his arm as a way of showing his complete commitment. And there he is, holding his arm. And it's really amazing that Sishu shows Bodhidharma as essentially still immovable in meditation, as if he's really not that impressed with this arm cutting. And he has sort of like one eye slightly lifted, right? As if he's saying, well, okay then. So I want you to see that Qichang is actually like grafting Buddhism, Chan Buddhism, onto literati painting, his theories about literati painting, right? So he's borrowing distinction between Northern Chan, a school that holds traditional and conservative methods for attaining enlightenment, which you practice diligently, you are methodical. And then there had evolved a Southern school, which was unorthodox. It held that you actually can become enlightened suddenly in a spark of ordinary experience that kind of breaks through your habitual mind. And so this painting depicts a 6th Chan patriarch, a kind of an advanced monk, who is chopping bamboo. And this story is that as the monk takes the knife and slices through the bamboo, the act of cutting, the act of slicing, the sound of it literally breaks through his conventional mind and enlightens him. His mind expands and he confronts reality as it is in that very instant. So he's not really cutting through the bamboo. He's cutting through his illusions and his false mind to experience reality directly with no conceptual barriers. And so the implication is that Southern school painting means that your knowledge of the past, in a sense, is cut through with the act of painting, with nature, with yourself, so that your brush strokes shatter convention and awaken perception the way the Chan patriarch became enlightened in the simple act of cutting bamboo.